Okay, so on tutorial 2 here, we are going to open Fireworks once more and explore some of the tools we can use. We're going to create a new document this time and use the dimensions that were already set, that we set last time, and we're going to set a transparent canvas colour. So our canvas background is obviously this checkered area here, and we're going to explore tools like importing images and tracing out or cutting parts of those images out. To better explain that, let's find an image. So using a search engine on, say, Internet Explorer, for example, I'm going to look for a fairly distinctive image. So how about a landmark like the Eiffel Tower? I'm just using Google now to look for images, and once I've found one that I'm happy with, I'm going to save that as a JPEG to use to import into Fireworks. Now just be careful with things like copyright here. Although I'm just copying this or saving it as a JPEG and importing it, you might need to think about whether you have permission to do that or not. But for this instance, we're just saving this as a JPEG. And now going back to Fireworks, we need to import this. Now there are a couple of ways of doing this. Generally using the file edit areas are quite easy. You can also see amongst the list of commands you have shortcuts. So in this case you could use Command R, or you could just right click on the canvas and select import. Now all I've done is I've found the JPEG that I've saved and selected open. Now all I need to do is place it on my canvas. So I've now done that by clicking, and it's placed it in its original size. And you can see I'm circling the tool that I need to have selected in order to move that object around. So now I've imported it, I can move it wherever I want as long as I have the selection tool selected. Now obviously that image is quite different in terms of size compared to the canvas, so what I can do from selecting and dragging from the corner, I can obviously adjust the size. However, obviously if I just do that freehand it might just distort it. So if I were to hold shift and drag from a corner like I'm doing now, you'll see it'll actually keep the proportion whilst increasing the size of the image. Now I've just dragged it around to an appropriate area. Now what I want to think about doing is what I can actually do with this image. What I'm going to teach you how to do now is how to trace an element of it, which you can use by selecting the pen tool. The pen tool will allow you to draw an outline of something and do it whatever you want with that shape. So to do that, I've selected the pen tool and I just simply click on a point that I want to start tracing. And once I've clicked once, you can see I can drag it around wherever I want. Then all I need to do is then click the next point where I want to continue the tracing. And obviously it's difficult to do when the image is quite small, so I've zoomed in and found another appropriate point. And again, you just move the cursor and click each time you move on. Now bear in mind, the more complicated the image, the more often you might need to set a point to trace. So here obviously, because the top of the Eiffel Tower is quite small, in this image at least, I've zoomed in, now I've zoomed back out so I can start to see the bottom of the tower. And I'm just doing this quite crudely and quite quickly. So when you do this yourself, you might want to spend more time tracing it and make sure you get all the elements that you want. So as I'm tracing, you can see these points just increase. And obviously if you make a step that you're not happy with, you can simply undo by selecting Edit and Undo command. What you could also do as well is use a shortcut like Control-Z. Control-Z is a shortcut that's also available in things like Word or any other sort of Microsoft Office package, for example. It's a really good shortcut to know. So I'm just getting to the point now where I've nearly completed a complete shape. Bear in mind with tracing, you need to actually make a shape. So you join all of the dots up to a point where you have a complete shape. So as I get to the top, I might need to zoom in again. So I'm going to zoom in again so we can see how it looks when you join that last shape up. So here we go. As I scroll to the top, you'll see as I click on the very first dot I set, if I now click on that, I have a complete outline. And now I need to select what I want to do with that, or what that actually is. So at the moment it just looks like a tracing outline of a shape. But if I select it by selecting the appropriate layer, which you can see I'm doing now, so if I click on the new path layer, you can see if I choose to hide it by clicking on the eye icon, you can't see the outline anymore. Now doing that with the image I've traced it from, you can see I can't see that. So you can just play around with those to hide objects. So now I've created that shape, you can see if I select it, it's now highlighted. And now what I can do is just play around with adding colours and things. So if I select assets here, for example, on the side, I can select different colour schemes that may be appropriate for what I'm trying to do. So I'm just having a look to see what sort of colour scheme might look quite good for an Eiffel Tower sort of shape. So just by selecting one, it then fills the object in with that sort of style. So here I'm just playing around with a few of those. And bear in mind, you don't have to use the styles. You could also select colours, and you could give it an outline colour and a fill colour of your choice. You can do blends and blurs. These are just the presets that are available to you, which are incredibly handy, particularly if you're creating quick logos. It's very useful for finding a very sort of complex thing straight away. And as you can see, when I turn the background back on, you could see the black and white of the background, which is quite handy for creating colour and black and white in the same image. By selecting that layer, I can also move the original image around, or I can just delete it. It's entirely up to you. Once you've traced something, you might not necessarily need the background. You can just select it and press the delete key. And now by selecting back on the layer that I have left, which is just my outline, I can use the selection tool to move it wherever I want. Now we need to think about saving this file, which we can do by selecting File, Save As. If you want to continue working on it on Fireworks, if it's a big project, you save it as a Fireworks PNG file, which you can go back to and edit at a later point. And just make sure you do that so you can continue working on it.